In the heart of a vast, snowbound wilderness, when the land's whispers are buried beneath a veil of ice, one man must depend not just on his skills, but on a secret passed down through the ages. As the storm rages, he becomes the guardian of an ancient knowledge that will carry him through a week of biting cold and unrelenting white silence. Before we begin, share where you're watching from. And if you're moved by the survival wisdom of the old tribes, subscribe, because tomorrow's legend uncovers secrets even deeper than this. The storm was coming. Ahuli could feel it in his bones, the air thickening with an uneasy tension that even the birds seemed to sense. The wind, once calm and steady, now carried with it an unfamiliar sharpness, a biting cold that whispered through the trees. Ahuli, the young Lakota hunter, stood at the edge of the village, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. In the distance, the gray clouds were gathering, rolling in like a great beast preparing to pounce. He had lived through many winters, each one a test of strength and patience, but this one felt different. His people had taught him to trust the land, to listen to the subtle signs it offered, and today it was speaking loudly. The trees bent low under the weight of the wind, and the earth beneath his feet seemed to tremble as if warning him of the danger to come. The elders had told stories of storms like this, blizzards so fierce that even the strongest shelters could not stand against them. It was not a matter of survival alone. It was about understanding the storm, respecting it, and using the knowledge passed down by their ancestors to stay safe. Ahuli had listened to those stories as a child, but now, as an adult, he felt the weight of that knowledge in a way he never had before. The village was preparing. Smoke rose from the fires, curling up into the gray sky. Families hurried to secure their shelters, making sure the doors were tightly shut, the firewood stacked high, and the animal pens well protected. Ahuli could see the nervousness in their movements. They knew the storm would be harsh, but they did not yet know its full fury. Ahuli, however, was not afraid. He had spent his life learning the rhythms of the land, the wind, the snow, and the sky. He had learned to read the signs and trust his instincts. This storm was no different from the ones his ancestors had faced. But it was a reminder, a test, perhaps to see if he, too, could survive. His grandmother's voice echoed in his mind. "The storm is not your enemy, child. The land is alive, and the storm is its way of speaking. You must listen, and you will be safe." He trusted her words, as he had trusted her guidance since he was a boy. She had taught him how to listen to the wind, how to feel the changes in the earth, how to understand the language of the sky. The storm would pass, but what mattered was what he learned from it. Ahuli turned his back on the village and began walking toward Fald, the northern ridge. The storm was still far off, but he knew he needed to prepare. He had learned from his ancestors that survival was not just about shelter, it was about understanding the land's rhythms and responding in harmony with them. The wind howled louder, urging him onward. Ahuli continued to dig beneath the ancient cedar, his breath rising in white clouds with every movement. The storm's fury grew stronger, but he worked without hesitation, his hands guided by something deeper than instinct. His grandmother's words echoed in his mind, as clear as the howling wind. "The earth holds more than it lets on, child. It will give to those who respect it." The snow began to fall harder, swirling around him like 1,000 tiny spirits. The sky was no longer visible, swallowed by the storm's intensity. But Ahuli felt no fear. This place, this hidden passage, was sacred. He had seen it only once before, when he was a boy, and he had sworn to never forget its location. The land had kept its secrets well, but it had chosen to reveal this one to him. As he dug deeper, the ground beneath his hands changed. It was colder, harder, as though he were reaching for something buried for centuries. His hands, calloused from years of hunting and survival, worked quickly now, his fingers finding something solid. With a swift push, the ground gave way, revealing the narrow passage beneath the roots of the cedar tree. The earth had shifted, opening a path just wide enough for him to crawl through. Ahuli paused for a moment, looking back toward the village. The wind howled louder now, the storm almost at its peak. His people would be safe within their homes, but Ahuli knew that his survival depended on more than just shelter. This passage, known only to the elders of the Lakota, was the key. It was not simply a refuge from the storm, it was a place of connection to the ancestors, a space where the spirits of his people could watch over him. He crawled into the passage, feeling the coolness of the stone walls against his skin. The air inside was different, thick with the scent of earth and moss. It was quiet here, almost too quiet, as though the storm had not yet found its way inside. As Ahuli moved deeper into the passage, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. He was not alone. The spirits of his ancestors were with him, their presence a steady warmth in the otherwise cold, dark space. The passage was long, winding through the earth, in a path that had been carved by generations before him. Ahuli did not need to see to know where he was going. His feet followed the familiar curves of the stone, his mind focused on the knowledge that had been passed down to him. The passage was a refuge, yes, but it was also a place of strength. The spirits of the land would guide him here, just as they had guided his people for thousands of years. After what felt like an eternity of crawling, Ahuli finally reached the heart of the passage, a small chamber where the air was warmer than outside. He settled into the earth, his body exhausted, but his spirit steady. Above, the storm raged on, but below, he was safe. The warmth of the earth embraced Ahuli as he settled deeper into the chamber, his body slowly adjusting to the stillness around him. The passage had been carved by time itself, a refuge not just for the body, but for the spirit. Here, in the belly of the earth, Ahuli felt a deep connection to his ancestors, as if they too had once rested in this very space, seeking solace from the storms above. Outside, the wind continued its furious dance, howling across the plains, the snow piling higher with each passing hour. But here, beneath the cedar roots, Ahuli felt the pulse of the land beneath him steady, eternal. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, a sharp contrast to the biting cold that raged just beyond the surface. The stone walls of the passage were cool to the touch, but their presence felt ancient, alive. Ahuli leaned back, resting his head against the stone, his eyes closed in quiet meditation. He could hear the distant rumble of the storm above, but in this moment it felt far away. His heart slowed, and he let the sounds of the earth fill his mind. The rhythm of his breathing matched the gentle hum of the passage, a reminder that he was part of something far greater than the storm that raged outside. The stories of his people, the Lakota, came to him in a steady stream. The teachings of his grandmother, her wisdom passed down through generations, filled his thoughts. She had always told him that the land would speak to those who listened, that the earth held its secrets and would reveal them in time. Ahuli had never doubted this truth, but now, as he sat in the safety of the earth, the full weight of her words settled over him. The storm was not an enemy. It was a teacher, showing him the depth of his connection to the land, to his people, and to the spirits who watched over them. Ahuli reached out and touched the stone walls of the passage, his fingers brushing over the rough surface. There was a wisdom in these stones, a knowledge that had been passed down through the generations. He had always believed in the stories of the elders, the hidden paths, the sacred places, but now, deep in the earth, he felt them in his bones. The earth was alive with the memories of his people, and in this space he was not alone. The passage was more than just a refuge from the storm. It was a sacred space where the barriers between the physical and spiritual worlds grew thin. Ahuli's ancestors had walked these same stones, felt the same cool earth beneath their feet, and had drawn strength from the land during the harshest winters. Now, as he sat in this quiet embrace, he understood that he too was part of this legacy. Ahuli remained in the chamber for what felt like days, though he had no way of telling the passage of time. The storm outside raged on, its fury so fierce that the walls of the passage vibrated in response to the wind's howling. Still, Ahuli felt no fear. The land had sheltered him, and in return he had listened. He had come to understand that the storm was more than a force of nature. It was a messenger, and it had come for a reason. The temperature in the chamber had risen, the warmth from the earth surrounding him like a blanket. But the wind's roar had become more insistent, its howling like a warning, a signal that the storm's peak was still to come. Ahuli closed his eyes and allowed himself to listen, to breathe deeply, and to reach out with his spirit. The storm was not simply testing his survival skills, it was testing his connection to the land, to the spirits, and to his ancestors. It was an ancient trial, one that had been faced by those before him, and one that his people would continue to face as long as they remained on this land. His thoughts drifted back to the words of his grandmother. "The storm will pass, child, but the land will remain. Never forget where you come from." Ahuli rose from his resting place, his body stiff from the stillness, and crawled towards the mouth of the passage. He could feel the storm's energy surging, and he knew it was time to return to the surface. The spirits had guided him here for a reason. He had learned what he needed to learn, and now he must return to the world above. The earth around him felt like it was urging him onward, the stone walls narrowing as he crawled toward the exit. As he neared the end of the passage, he paused for a moment, listening intently. The wind had changed direction, now pressing against the earth as if to push him back. But Ahuli was resolute. He had faced worse storms before, and this one, though fierce, was no different. With a steady breath, he pulled himself from the stone passage and emerged into the swirling blizzard. The cold hit him like a wall, but his body was prepared. The storm had not defeated him, it had only tested his will. He knew the land, he knew the rhythm of the wind, and he knew that the storm would pass as it always did. Through the thick snow, Ahuli's eyes caught the outline of his village, standing steadfast against the storm's assault. The smoke from the fires inside drifted upward, a beacon of life amid the storm's fury. Ahuli stood tall, his face turned to the wind. The spirits were with him, and he would return to the village not as a man who had survived, but as one who had listened and understood. Ahuli returned to the village as the storm began to subside, its rage slowly turning into a quiet, whistling breeze. The once violent blizzard now lay still, like a sleeping beast that had exhausted its strength. The winds had shifted, and the snow began to settle, leaving the land covered in a soft, quiet blanket of white. But for Ahuli, the storm had done more than just pass. It had left behind a deep sense of understanding, a spiritual connection to the earth and his ancestors that could never be taken away. As he approached the village, the familiar warmth of his people's fires filled the air. Smoke rose from their homes, curling upwards to meet the clearing sky. The village was calm now, the harshness of the storm behind them. Yet Ahuli knew that what he had learned in the depths of the earth was something deeper than survival. It was a reminder of the sacred bond that tied his people to the land. The storm had been more than a challenge, it had been a lesson in humility, in patience, and in the importance of listening to the earth. The people gathered around the fire pit, their faces lit by the soft glow of the flames. They saw Ahuli, and his calm presence spoke more than any words ever could. They had seen the storm rage and wondered if their neighbor would return, if he would survive the fierce winds and bitter cold. But as Ahuli approached, it was clear that he had come through not just with his life, but with wisdom. He had not only survived, he had understood. With his steady steps, Ahuli joined the circle around the fire. His people, silent at first, began to murmur among themselves, curious about his journey and what he had encountered in the depths of the earth. He sat among them, the heat of the fire warming his face, but his mind still lingering on the passage beneath the cedar tree, the secret refuge of his ancestors. Ahuli spoke softly, sharing his experience without boast, but with the reverence the land demanded. He spoke of the storm, of the spirits, and of the ancient passage where the earth had wrapped him in warmth and quiet during the storm's fury. The people listened, their eyes wide with awe, understanding that Ahuli had not simply found shelter. He had found a sacred connection that bound him to their past, to their ancestors, and to the earth that provided for them. The fire crackled, and in its warmth the people understood. They had always known that survival was not just about facing the elements, it was about understanding the land, respecting its power, and listening to its quiet whispers. Ahuli had reminded them of this ancient truth, and in that moment he was more than a survivor. He was a bridge between their past and their future. As the fire burned brightly, the storm outside faded into memory. The lesson of the blizzard, of the hidden passage, would remain in the hearts of the Lakota people for generations to come. The land had spoken, and they had listened.